When you hear these tracks, hiding in a locker somewhere probably isn't such a bad idea. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and you'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 scariest video game soundtracks. Before we begin, we publish new videos every day, so be sure to subscribe for more great content. For this list, we're looking at the in-game music that creates a sense of dread and despair or rattles you to the core, adding to the immersion of these great horror titles. Number 10, Fatal Frame. Very minimalist in design, the slow build of the soundtrack works in its favor here, as the constant ambiance lingers at the back of your mind, leaving players in an uneasy sense of dread. With the camera obscura as the only weapon, ghosts can linger around without players knowing until they look through the lens. The music can also reflect the anguish the ghosts faced at their time of death, as well as their anger towards the living. The game and music draw inspiration from popular Japanese horror and spirit films. The chilling music, combined with the frightening gameplay, has cemented the franchise as one of the iconic survival horror series. Number 9, Outlast. A creepy setting such as a derelict insane asylum deserves an equally creepy soundtrack. Rather unsettling, it really replicates the feeling of not knowing who to trust. The game is full of freaky inmates. Some are docile, while some are outwardly hostile. Though, when you hear one of the soundtracks playing, it's best not to take any chances and just run the other way. Also, a lot of the tracks have a revolting feeling to them, as if you've just seen something disgusting, which, you most likely have. While others create an intense panic, are fast-paced and heavy on the strings as you run for your life from a psychopath. Number 8, BioShock. The gameplay and music, coupled with the 60s era, conjure up one frighteningly beautiful and cinematic game. The environment and story are more twisted than horrific, and the music serves that scene beautifully, employing rhythms and instruments from the time and combining it with ominous tones. The soundtrack definitely sends chills down your spine and creates a constant sense of unease. Though you're constantly on edge, some of the tracks utilize a slow pace and are... Number 7, Amnesia, The Dark Descent. Moody, dark, and mysterious ambiance at its perfection, Amnesia, The Dark Descent is the perfect crap your pants material. The soundtrack alone gets you picturing things that aren't really there, flooding every inch of your body with fear and paranoia, as the constant drone of the tracks worm their way into your mind. The game was right to measure the protagonist's sanity, because it plays with you just as much as you play it. The tone of the music sets the castle setting quite well too, as the sense of foreboding matches it perfectly. Number 6, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. We touched on measuring sanity in the previous entry, but this particular entry takes the cake on that account. The soundtrack messes with your mind psychologically, as does the game itself. The music has traces of vaguely identifiable sounds you can't quite make out, as well as some creepy whispering. Every track has a different feel to it based on the location of the game you're currently in. Not only creepy, but also well composed. Some tracks have a flair for theatrics, but not in a cheesy way. It only adds to the excitement and horror of the experience. Number 5, Clock Tower. Songs that play. While some tracks evoke fear, others evoke a sense of mystery though, and no one can argue that the ghosts of deceased children singing to you isn't creepy as all hell. Number 4, American Mcgee's Alice. A game that takes a beloved and innocent fairy tale and spins it with psychological horror twists deserves a twisted soundtrack, and it succeeds on that account. The soundtrack takes innocent and childlike sounds and twists them into something dark, manic, and sinister. much like the game itself. Although a lot of the tracks are scary, they also have a sadness to them. After enduring a traumatic incident, Alice loses her grip on reality, and Wonderland is a reflection of the turmoil that goes on in her mind. So, the music captures that despair perfectly. Number 3, Dark Souls 3. While Dark Souls isn't necessarily a horror game, you can't deny that its setting is quite horrific. This is a game filled with themes of misery, despair, and hopelessness. Each track melds epic scope, terror, and sadness, which toys with the player's emotions and helps with the world building. Certain tracks, like the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, really gets your hands sweating. It's been revealed that many of the bosses time their attacks to the beats of the music, helping to give these pulse-pounding encounters a sense of flow that you might not notice while you're desperately trying to dive roll away. Number 2, Resident Evil Remake. The zombie genre has become kind of oversaturated, and as a result, it's lost a lot of the fear factor it once induced on audiences and players worldwide. Although, if you were to go back to this game, it'd still put you on edge and have you trembling, and it owes a lot of that to the soundtrack. Right from the get-go, it introduces a lot of dread and hopelessness, and lets players know that they're basically trapped.
What was that? Chris?
No.
Jill, go and investigate.
The music relies on creating a slow building panic, rather than high-pitched loud noises to make you jump. This has you being scared throughout basically the whole game, and makes you want to leave basically every room as fast as you've entered it. Number 1, Silent Hill 2.
You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did.
The soundtrack is eerie and mysterious while remaining ominously spooky, which differs from Akira Yamaoka's work in later games like Silent Hill Homecoming, which focused more on dark and disturbing sounds. The soundtrack to Silent Hill 2 is a perfect example of how music can take you places in your head, and that reflects heavily on the story of the game, as everything in Silent Hill has to do with James's mind.
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I?
Most tracks have a sense of discovering something awful, which in turn blends terror and sadness beautifully. After playing through and listening to all this music, in your most restless of dreams, you'll hear the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.